I hadn't seen my grandma, Lorraine, in almost 2 years when she called me out of the blue and said, "Sweetheart, I've been banned from the retirement home. Can I crash at your place for a bit?" That was the entire call. No. Hello. No explanation. Just that. And somehow, it felt very on brand for her. My grandma isn't like other grandmas. She's sharp as a tack, swears like a sailor, and dresses like someone who runs a jazz club in the 1950s. When I was growing up, she'd sneak me cookies, tell me stories about the riots in the 60s, and taught me how to make a martini before I even turned 18. My parents used to say she lacked boundaries. I used to think she was the coolest person I'd ever met. But we hadn't been close in years. Life got busy. She moved into that fancy retirement village with yoga classes and painting sessions, and God knows what. I assumed she was happy there. Until she showed up at my apartment doorstep the next morning with 3 leopard print suitcases, a parrot in a cage, and a glittery sign that said, "Home is where the gin is." I opened the door still half asleep. "Grandma!" Surprise! I brought tacos. Also, I may have called your landlord and said I'm moving in. To be fair, my apartment was bigger than most. 2 bedrooms, downtown, decent light. I was lucky. But I'd also been living alone for the first time in years, after a breakup that left me emotionally wrecked and deeply attached to my own silence. She walked in like she owned the place, took off her boots, fed her parrot some sunflower seeds, and said, "So, when do you leave for work?" I didn't even ask what happened at the retirement home until later that night when I found her rearranging my bookshelf in alphabetical order while humming Frank Sinatra. "What did you do?" I asked. She didn't even look up. There may have been an incident involving a poker game, 3 bottles of wine, and Mrs. Jenkins's prized cat. Honestly, it's all been blown way out of proportion. I waited, and I may have called the director a dictator in beige slacks. That was probably the tipping point. That was day 1. By day 3, my life had completely changed. She woke up at 5:30 every morning, made French press coffee. Not for me, for her. I wasn't allowed to touch her beans. And blasted jazz through the kitchen while frying bacon. Like it was her part-time job. My neighbors started asking if I was throwing parties. She flirted shamelessly with the guy who lived across the hall, whom I'd had a crush on for months. And she started leaving passive-aggressive notes around. The apartment. Don't leave wet towels on the floor. You're not an animal. This plant is dying. Try watering it before I call Plant Protective Services. You call this a fridge? It's a crime scene. At first, I was overwhelmed. My home stopped feeling like mine. She was loud, opinionated, and unapologetically herself. I, on the other hand, was the queen of low energy and emotional avoidance. But then something weird happened. I started sleeping better. I started laughing more. She made me dinner. Real dinner. Like actual roast chicken and scalloped potatoes. Not Trader Joe's frozen meals. We started watching terrible old movies together. She made fun of them the whole time. I started looking forward to coming home just to hear what new chaos she'd stirred up. And then, one Friday night, I got home to find her in the living room with 3 older women I'd never seen before, drinking sangria and watching a documentary about murderers. "Who are they?" I asked, startled. "Mahjong club," she said, like it was obvious. "We meet here now. It's BYOB, don't worry. I told them you're uptight." I wasn't uptight. Okay, I was a little uptight. But they were actually kind of fun. She was slowly taking over my life. But weirdly, it wasn't all bad. One night, after 1 too many glasses of wine, I asked her, "Did you really get kicked out? Or did you just want to come here?" She hesitated, just for a second. "Both." And then, softly, "I missed being needed." I didn't say anything, but something in my chest cracked open a little. Because maybe I'd needed her too. It was after midnight when I heard the faint clatter in the kitchen. At first, I thought I was dreaming. But no, it was unmistakably the sound of someone arguing with a blender. I stumbled out of bed, groggy, and peeked around the corner. There was my grandmother, in a full-length silk robe, trying to shove Frozen bananas into the blender, while whisper yelling at it like a hostage negotiator. "Don't you die on me now. I've got plans for you." I cleared my throat. She turned around like a raccoon caught in a trash can, wide-eyed. I was making us breakfast smoothies, prepped ahead. Very millennial of me, she said with a guilty smile. It was 12:18 a.m. The thing is, I'd stopped questioning her schedule by then. She was chaos wrapped in perfume and pearls, and I was slowly adjusting to life under her gentle tyranny, except not everything was gentle. By week 3, I started noticing things that made me pause. She'd leave the stove on without remembering. Once, she accidentally microwaved a metal spoon. She'd laugh it off, always charming, always dismissive. But I was beginning to realize she wasn't just eccentric. She was getting forgetful. One afternoon, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, staring at a photo of my mom, her daughter. She didn't say anything when I walked in. Just looked up slowly, her eyes glassy. She was 12 in this. "Picture," she said. "Do you remember that dress? Yellow. Ruffles. I hated it. She looked like a squashed daffodil." I smiled. "I think it's cute." She nodded, then said softly, "She was gone before I could tell her I was proud of her." You ever have words stuck in your throat too long? I sat down beside her. She hadn't talked about my mom in years. Not after the accident. Not at the funeral. Not even afterward, when I'd stayed silent too, thinking maybe that's what grief looked like for adults. Silence. "I miss her too," I said. She looked at me and something shifted. I thought if I stayed busy, if I stayed sharp, I wouldn't feel it. "But then, that place," she said, meaning the retirement home, "they make you sit still too long. You can't outrun ghosts when you're always in the same chair." She laughed once, bitter. "So I caused a little trouble." That was the first time I saw through the performance. Lorraine, my indestructible, martini-shaking, Sinatra-singing, poker-cheating grandmother, was just a woman who'd lost her daughter and didn't know how to stop running. Living with her became less about adjustment and more about connection. She taught me how to poach an egg properly, then complained that I used sad salt. She convinced me to go on a date with a guy from the bookstore by saying, "If he reads and showers, he's already better than your last one." She wasn't wrong. She redecorated my bathroom, rearranged my spice rack, and once handed out cookies to my building's mailroom staff with a handwritten note that said, "From the better roommate." And then one day, I came home and she was gone. At first, I thought maybe she went for a walk or to visit one of her mahjong friends. But after an hour, I started to panic. I called her cell phone. No answer. I finally found her at a coffee shop a few blocks away, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a paper cup and a far-off look on her face. "Grandma," I breathed. I was freaking out. She looked up, surprised. "I just wanted to sit somewhere with noise." "You didn't tell me." "I didn't think I had to." We sat in silence for a moment. "I forgot where I was going," she said finally, her voice small. "I left the building, and then I couldn't remember if I was getting groceries or picking up dry cleaning. I don't even have dry cleaning." That night was the first time I saw her scared. I tucked her into bed like a child, and she didn't fight me. The next morning, she pretended like nothing happened. Back to eggs, jazz, and unsolicited life advice. But I knew. Something had shifted, and I knew we'd have to talk about what came next, sooner than either of us wanted. For a few weeks, we pretended nothing had changed. Grandma Lorraine still played her records in the morning. Still made overly complicated breakfasts that left my kitchen looking like a food truck exploded. Still wrote sticky notes for things. That didn't need sticky notes. Water the plant. The plant was fake. Feed Bernie. Her parrot was constantly overfed. Don't forget to exist today. Okay, that one made me smile. But there was a new kind of silence in between. Her chatter. Little gaps she didn't used to have. Words she'd forget mid-sentence. Once, she called me by my mom's name and corrected herself so fast I almost thought I'd imagined it. I didn't push. I didn't ask. Not because I didn't care. Because I was scared of what she might say. Until one night, she sat down across from me at dinner, pushed her plate aside and said, "I think I'm losing my mind." She said it like she was describing the weather. Lightly, casually. Like the sentence didn't crack something open inside her. I put down my fork. "What makes you say that?" She looked at me, sharp as ever, and for a second I thought maybe it had passed. Then she said, "Because I keep forgetting the names of people I love. Because I look at a frying pan and forget what it's for. Because I walked into your bedroom the other day looking for a vacuum cleaner that doesn't exist." I stayed quiet. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't feel like a lie. She nodded. "It started before the retirement home. I covered it up with jokes and noise, but they noticed. That's why they wanted to put me under supervision. That's why I left." I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Have you seen a doctor?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Once. Enough to know what I didn't want to know. Early stages, they said. Mild cognitive impairment. Could become something. Might not." I reached across the table and took her hand. She flinched a little, then relaxed. "I don't want to go back there," she said. "Not to that home. Not yet." "You won't," I told her. "You're staying right here." And I meant it, even if I didn't know what that meant yet. Things shifted after that. We made routines. Labels went up on cabinets. We put her phone on a lanyard with a GPS tracker, just in case, which she resisted until I told her it was very spy movie chic. Her mahjong friends kept visiting. She started teaching one of them, Diane, how to make homemade pasta. They turned my kitchen into a flower-covered war zone every Thursday. She asked if she could start a YouTube channel for senior sass and cocktails. I said yes. She got 38 subscribers in a week. Most of them commented in all caps. But even as we made light of it, there were reminders. She once poured orange juice into her cereal and didn't notice. She forgot I was lactose intolerant and made. Oh, a lasagna so cheesy, it could have been used as insulation. I ate it anyway. I just scheduled my suffering. And sometimes I'd find her staring out the window, still and quiet, like her mind had gone somewhere else for a few minutes. When I asked what she was thinking, she'd smile and say, "Just rewinding." Then came the incident. It was a Tuesday. I came home late from work. I'd stayed back covering for a coworker. I'd texted her to let her know I'd be home. After 8. No response, but that wasn't unusual. When I opened the front door, I found the stove still on. A pot of something burnt beyond recognition. The windows fogged up. And no sign of Grandma Lorraine. My heart dropped into my stomach. I called her name. Nothing. I checked the bedroom. Empty. The bathroom. Empty. I grabbed my phone and opened the GPS app we'd installed. She was 3 blocks away, on foot, in the opposite direction of the coffee shop she liked. I ran. When I found her, she was sitting on a park bench under a flickering street lamp, humming to herself, holding her purse like a toddler clutches a favorite toy. "Grandma!" I panted. "You okay?" She looked up at me, confused. Then recognition dawned. Her face crumpled like tissue. "I forgot where home was," she said. "I remembered your face, but I couldn't remember your door." I sat beside her and pulled her close. She didn't resist. She just leaned in and whispered, "I think it's getting worse." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I'd wished for my independence back. My silence, my freedom, my clean fridge. And I realized I didn't want any of that anymore. Not like I used to. Because what I had now, with all its chaos and unpredictability, felt real. Honest. Messy in the way life is supposed to be. Messy when you love someone. Still, I knew we couldn't keep pretending forever. I started making calls the next morning. Quietly. carefully. For specialists, for in-home care options, for therapists who work with dementia patients and their families. She didn't know yet, but she would. And when she did, I wanted to be ready, because if she was brave enough to tell me the truth, I had to be brave enough to face what came next. We never had one big, life-changing moment after that. There was no dramatic collapse, no sudden forgetting of my name, no heartbreaking scream in the middle of the night. It was quieter than that. Slower, like autumn turning to winter. Not overnight, but leaf by leaf. She started mixing up days, putting things in the freezer that didn't belong there, asking about people who had passed years ago. But she was still Grandma Lorraine. Still sassy. Still reminding me to fix my posture before gravity takes me by the shoulders. Still telling strangers in the elevator about her reign of terror at the retirement home. But there were changes. She stopped making pasta with Diane. She couldn't follow her own cocktail recipes anymore. She watched the same black and white movie 3 times in 1 week and didn't realize it. And then, one morning, she looked at me from across the kitchen table and said, "You look familiar. Did we go to school together?" I smiled, even though it punched a hole in my chest. "No," I said softly. "But we've lived a little life together." She blinked, then laughed. "Must have been some life," she said, "because you make me feel safe." Eventually, we brought in a part-time caregiver, Maria. She was gentle, funny, patient. Grandma hated her for the first 2 weeks. "She hovers like a fruit fly," she told me once. But then she spilled tea on her lap, and Maria had cleaned it up before she even flinched. After that, she warmed up. Slowly, like bread in the oven. Learned so much during those months. That love is sometimes spoon-feeding someone soup. That dignity isn't in what you remember, but in how you're treated when you forget. That grief can arrive before someone is even gone. And most of all, that sometimes being strong doesn't mean holding everything together. It means sitting next to someone while they fall apart, and not walking away. It was a Sunday when it happened. I woke up late, first time in weeks, and walked into the living room to find Maria sitting quietly in the armchair. She looked up at me, her eyes red. "I'm so sorry," she said gently. Grandma Lorraine had passed in her sleep. Peaceful, still. A slight smile on her face, like she'd remembered something kind right at the end. I sat down on the floor. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, staring at the sunlight through the window, dust dancing like it was suspended in time. Then I laughed, a little, broken, disbelieving laugh. Because of course she'd choose a Sunday, her favorite, and day. "No one ever dies on a Monday," she once said. "It's too unoriginal." The funeral was small, but packed. Her mahjong crew wore glittery brooches and red lipstick in her honor. Diane read a poem Grandma had once written, entitled Memoirs of a Martini Glass. It was inappropriate and perfect. I gave a speech. I talked about the blender at midnight, about the notes on the fridge and the pasta on the ceiling, about the time she tried to remodel my living room by moving a single chair and claiming, "It had flow now." I said, she didn't just live with me. She made me feel more alive than I've ever been. People cried. People laughed. It was the exact kind of chaos she would have loved. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Familiar loopy cursive. It had been dated 3 months earlier. Inside was a single note. "If you're reading this, I'm gone." Unless I faked it, in which case, surprise. But assuming it's the real thing, I want to say thank you. You gave me more life in these last months than I ever felt in that home. And just so you know, the tea tin in the pantry? Not tea. It's where I stashed the emergency martini fund. Use it for something wonderful. Or ridiculous. Either way, live. And keep your chin up. Gravity's watching. There was also a photo tucked inside. Her and my mom. Both younger, both beaming. My grandma's lipstick smudged, my mom laughing. Behind them, someone had written in blue ink, "Our wild ones, our soft storms." I keep that photo on my nightstand now. The tea tin sits beside it, still full, still untouched. Maybe one day I'll use it, or maybe I'll leave it for someone else. Someone who needs a reminder that sometimes the most unforgettable people are the ones who slowly take over your life and then leave behind a version of yourself you never knew you could be. And maybe that's what real legacy looks like.